to Similarly Different. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Similarly Different. On today's episode, we are talking about religion. To some, this topic divides us. It transforms us. Sometimes we have trauma from it, and other times it's what saved us. I have a guest today that I know very deeply. I hold very, very close to my heart, and you guys may have seen her, may have heard of her, or at minimum, may have heard of her family. I'm talking about none other than one of my closest friends, Courtney Acuña Copeland. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, you are my producer.
I know, I was about to say, wait, you left that off my resume. I'm your producer first, more than anything.
Well, no, you're my friend first.
Okay, yes, that's true.
You're my friend first. I've said this from the get. If you know me on a personal level, whatever it is that we do work-wise, you are my friend first. My manager, Mal, the same thing. She is my friend first because you're a human besides all of that stuff. And I don't know why we've never been on an episode together, whether it be my podcast or yours.
Okay, well, I was supposed to do your kidnapping story. That was like super intense. I was supposed to do that interview with you, and my voice was gone for like a solid month. I couldn't speak, and so Carla was coming in to do the interview. You were going to interview her, and I just said she's going to have to do this story with you, so she filled in for me. So we were supposed to do a finale of season 1. It didn't work out, but I'm thankful to just be here now.
Yes. Okay, so for those that don't know, we're diving into a story that has lived headlines, documentaries, TV shows, YouTube episodes, and whatever else you want to say. My guest, Courtney Copeland, is the granddaughter of Kenneth Copeland. Now, you may have heard of Kenneth Copeland. You may have seen him. You may not know his name, but know his face. He is one of the most known evangelists of all times that started the whole, what do you want to call that? What do we categorize it as?
I feel like I'm in the hot seat a little bit because knowing who Kenneth Copeland is today is typically like a viral, crazy video that is like, unfortunately, very hard to watch.
Yeah.
So if you would have asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have said he's responsible for like the faith movement as far as, you know, was the first televangelist on TV in color. He like, you know, really broke a lot of barriers as what we know. Like it was Billy Graham, then it was Kenneth Copeland, and then the history has unrolled since. But unfortunately today, if you know who Kenneth Copeland is and you're like my friends in LA who know, you know, we're outside of the Bible Belt, right? So like in LA, he's kind of this like crazy preacher or known as like the most wealthy pastor in America. And there's a lot of things that are untrue about that. There's a lot of things that are true that I'm willing to defend. And I think that's what we're gonna get into. But
and I don't even think I don't like the word defend. I feel like defend is when you're in the wrong and you have to prove the right.
Like on trial.
Yeah. I don't think it's defend. I think you're speaking your truth and somebody can listen to it and say, I call it bullshit. And somebody else can be like, wow, I can see it in a different light. And that's all it is. You're not trying to convince anyone.
Right.
That's not what that is here, you know? And I think that growing up myself in church, I have seen many things and I can understand the people that say, church gave me trauma. I can understand the things that say church made me want to not go towards God. I can also understand the people that say church saved my life. But for me personally, I don't connect my religion or my connection to God based on a church. I connect it on my relationship. And if I had mentors or spiritual, in my regard, I had a lot of spiritual fathers and a lot of spiritual mothers along the way. And I definitely grew up in a very charismatic church where we danced. I was on the dance team. We had flags, we had tambourines. There was, you know, speaking in tongues. There was things out of this world that I saw with my own bare eyes that you can't tell me there is not a God. In itself, if you haven't seen my podcast, go to season 1 finale. It tells you why I believe in God. Write that in there. But besides that, I started going to church at 11. I wasn't forced. I was given more an extracurricular activity to be able to stay out of trouble and to be able to identify my emotions and my feelings when I couldn't understand them with my mom. And I have my own idea of religion and my own idea of God and the church. And I think when I met you, I didn't know what your name came with. I didn't care, to be honest, because I was getting to know you for you. And I think as time has passed and I've learned about what you've had to go through with carrying the name and proudly carrying it, because you've had your own experience, and also hearing other people, whether it be people I know or naysayers, I was just like, man, like, first and foremost, even though horoscopes is not religion, like, I'm a Taurus. And the first thing in the Taurus in the horoscope is that they are loyal, okay? So I will hear you out, I will listen to you, and I will take you from my own experience. And it kind of irked me more in the last month and a half, the fact that people have a lot to say, and I don't like that. And I was like, you guys are having so much to say, but you're not asking her. Give her the chance to speak.
To be honest, I could cry right now because I knew that you loved me, but like, I know your character behind other people's, but I cannot.
Why are you crying? Why are you crying?
Oh, this is wild.
She does not cry.
I literally never cry. I know your character behind other people's back. I just never, this like care.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. It doesn't matter in LA. Like, it doesn't matter who my honestly, 90% of the people watching this have no idea who my grandfather is, and that's okay. But like, that's not a surprise is what I'm getting at. I'm from Texas, the Bible Belt in the South. Most people would know who my grandfather is. But for you to say that way, like, just that you would honestly have that perspective, which I'm not surprised by. You carry that perspective for everyone you meet. You give everyone the benefit of the doubt. But to hear you say that about me in this situation, like, I don't know why that makes me so much. I really appreciate it. I think because so many people, like, it's really not a big deal. Like, who my grandfather is isn't a big deal. So therefore, like, people don't care. But to hear you like say that with such, just like saying it with your chest like that, like, it just means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah. And I kind of want to, I don't want to say debunk the myths, because again, we're not trying to prove anything, but I just want to show you guys from my eyes the person I know and the person I met. I mean, listen, I'll tell you this, I spent a week with her family and I had my own experiences, and you don't have to take anything from this, but whether you're questioning religion, whether you've had your opinion about religion, or maybe you even made a 3-part series YouTube about this family that you've actually never taken time to get to know. I think this is just seeing it from a different light, and you can take what you want from it or take nothing from it at all. I guess I want you to start by sharing your story on faith, family, and what has religion meant from you, and when did it start?
So I, very similar to you, grew up in it. Like, I joke about I came out of the womb praying in tongues. Like, I just thought everyone did it. I didn't realize that a majority of Christians thought that was crazy. Like, I thought that everyone did it. I just thought it was normal. It wasn't until I was probably like 9 or 10 at school, in a Christian school, that I realized, like, oh, people think we're weird. I just didn't really have any idea about that. So I grew up in that sense. I don't actually have the typical like crazy sheltered life that a lot of people in maybe this, like my first cousins, like my dad's siblings. So Kenneth is my dad's dad. So like my dad's sister's kids, like they weren't allowed to date. They weren't allowed to like do these different things. Whereas like my dad raised me, he was crazy growing up. He was partying, like doing hard drugs, like at the age of 12, like Kenneth's son. He had the typical like PK experience. And he told me at a very young age, I was in like 7th or 8th grade, and he told me, there's nothing you can do that I haven't tried. So please just be honest with me, and I will never judge you for what you do. And I was kind of raised on it, to be honest, maybe even a little too free. Like, I really pushed the envelope, not on purpose. I just like was having fun, and I was kind of going wild at 14, 15 years old.
What's like the wildest thing you did at 14? What's like wild to you?
Wild.
Like alcohol?
No, like wild. I'll tell you later. I can't.
Okay. Wild.
Only my dad knows.
Okay.
No, like at 14, I looked 20. Okay. Like, I looked older at 14 than I do now, I feel like.
Would you say, in this terms, you were the Paris Hilton of that
I mean, I just like lived, it wasn't even a double life. Like I kind of started out as a black sheep, like grandchild of, I was the youngest grandchild until my siblings came like 10 years later.
Okay.
So like I just kind of grew up as this, I understood what I grew up seeing miracles. So like I grew up, it's a very, like she said, charismatic, like laying on of hands, miracles, like all of these things. I grew up seeing things that they talk about in the Bible. I grew up seeing like people that have never walk and like limbs grow and like blind people see. Like I grew up, I thought that was normal. I thought everyone like grew up that way. So then when I kind of reached an older age and I was like, wait a second, how are we this rich? Like, where did this money come from? And I actually had to do this own exploratory phase of my own life of like, how did we end up in this position? And is the stuff that my family's saying is true? And I actually went through a moment of like, I got tired of there was some expose on some news channel about my family, and my parents were so just like, it's not true, and so unbothered by it that it felt passive at the time that I was like, wait, why don't you want to talk about it?
Right.
And so I like changed my last name on Facebook, like my MySpace and stuff. I like took my last name off. I was like going by my middle name, like Courtney Mercer and all this stuff. And that lasted a whole, I would say like year maybe, where I was just like, I'm going to be cool with like my other side of the family that like is uninvolved in
How old were you in this time?
Like 17, 18.
Okay.
And basically, long story short, I went on a mission trip with my high school to Africa. I just wanted to go to Africa. It wasn't necessarily about the mission trip. And the pastor there, he like saw me and he recognized me and he was like, I know who you are. I know that your eyes, I know you by your grandfather. And I just had this like Jonah and the whale moment. Like I'm in literally Africa and I can't escape this name, this Copeland name that's like following me. And it felt very much like God. It was the first time that I felt like God was coming after me for me personally and not necessarily like this thing of my family.
Were you ever angry at God to have the name?
I wasn't angry, but I definitely was confused for a minute. I was confused, like, why are people saying this about us? Because I'm watching my family. Like, my dad ran the organization. Like, he was the CEO. So I'm, like, watching my dad, who's a man of character, integrity, like, is super honest, super straightforward. So I'm like, wait, why are they? I was very confused. And I was like, okay, God, you and I are going to have to sort this out because this is starting, like, why are so many people saying this stuff about us? Are we screwing people over? Like, are we doing this stuff?
And I think it's also like a confusion in that moment that you could also feel of, I'm witnessing all these things, so I know there's God. I know this has to be real, but then everybody is saying that it has to be fake and that it's all an act.
Right.
So how are you able to navigate where's the truth?
Yeah, and it kind of all settled and came to a halt when I actually went to go work for my grandfather. I wanted to go to school. I'm like very entrepreneurial. I wanted to go to school like far away. I was like, I'm going to go, to GW and DC, and I'm going to like make a name for myself outside of this world, which I actually did end up doing, like coming out here to LA. But in the moment, it was a very rebellious, like, MO. Like I just was like, I don't want anything to do with it. And long story short, I ended up going back to Africa, starting a sports camp there. And I went to my dad, who was running my grandfather's organization, and I was like, hey, y'all don't have a missions component. Like I could do my sports camps as a part of Kenneth Copeland Ministries. And my dad was like, if you want to work here, you can work in the mailroom. Like, I'm not giving you that job. And so I started out, my first job working for my grandfather was I was running the distribution for products, specifically because regular product versus product that we sent to prisons had to be produced differently. There couldn't be staples in them, and like we couldn't have plastic in them and different things. And so my first job was like I was in the mailroom fulfilling orders to our prison, the amount of free product that we were like sending out to prisons. And I just had this bird's eye view of what my grandfather even did, or like who he was and what he was about, from the actual like feet on the ground, boots on the ground, this is what we do. And all the resentment, all of the frustration, all of the confusion went out the window, because I saw like, oh my gosh, we help hundreds of thousands of people. And no one knows, and that's okay, but like I don't have to be mad anymore.
Yeah.
Because like now I see the fruit of what all this has been for, and the amount of people that we've helped and saved, and that probably no one will ever know about, and that's okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you're doing something good and you're doing it for validation, then you're not doing it for the right reason, right? So it's like, okay, so I have asked ChatGPT, the queen.
We love chat.
I said, I need you to tell me all the myths, all the rumors that are being said about Kenneth Copeland. And I just want to walk through them. First of all, I know y'all mother effers have lied at least once today. Let's start with that. I know y'all have had a bad, evil thought. You probably have thought about your teacher at one point, your babysitter, your neighbor, or even your boy's girl.
Where are you going with this?
So, we're going to talk about rumors and myths.
Okay.
But I want you to actually hear what you, people online, have potentially said while you guys have tried to crucify people that you actually don't know. Like if you are a god and have never done anything wrong.
Right.
So, prosperity gospel. The idea that faith and giving guarantee wealth and healing. How do you personally see this teaching, and do you feel it reflects with your family's true values?
Great question. The prosperity gospel is not something that we would title ourselves. It's something that's kind of been labeled on us, but what that comes from is the word prosperous actually means like nothing missing, nothing broken. And that is a hill I will die on. Like, we believe that God wants you whole in every area of your life. Like, he wants you whole in your body, in your family, in your finances, with your relationships, at your job. Like, we believe that God wants you to live a prosperous life. The love of money is the root of all evil, not money. And when people have an issue with the prosperity gospel, they're going to have an issue with heaven, because in heaven, it talks the Bible. This is in the Bible. This is not my grandfather's doctrine. Like, this is in the Bible. It says that heaven is paved with streets of gold and there's a mansion with your name on it. So like, when people have an issue with prosperity, they're not going to really enjoy heaven, because it looks very different than earth looks. And I believe that God sent Jesus not so that we could just be saved and have eternal life, but so that we could experience heaven on earth, and not just experience heaven one day as this far off thing.
Lavish lifestyle. The evangelist with the private jets, the mansions, and the infamous tube full of demons comment. When you hear people criticize your family's lifestyle, what do you wish they understood about it?
I'll address the tube full of demons comment. First of all, that actually wasn't my grandfather. That was someone else that said that in a conversation with my grandfather. My grandfather has been on an airline when like literally like someone tried to attack him, and I think that that's where the heart of that conversation came from. Regardless, my grandfather does not think that flying on an airline is flying with a tube full of demons. I would like to say, show me an airline that can keep up with my grandfather's schedule and we'll sell the jet tomorrow. Yeah. You know, like my grandfather's literally 88 years old and is still preaching more than majority of the evangelists in America today. For majority of his tenure as a minister, which is over 50 years, he was preaching in a different city every day. And, you know, like the infamous quote is, Jesus rode into town on a donkey. Why should Kenneth Copeland fly to his next town on a jet? And I just get so like confused by that, because, and I do get the frustration that people think, well, people's donations are paying for him to fly around on a private jet. That's actually not true. For our ministry, we actually have what we call designated funds. So like, no one's ever giving money towards the aircraft that my grandfather's traveling on without knowledge that that's what they're giving to. So like, while I'm not speaking for every organization, and I'm also not defending every organization. I'm also not defending all the people on the roster that have been labeled as prosperity gospels, because there's people I look at frequently that I would say, like, I'm thankful that I know we can walk in a line of integrity. I can't say that for every other prosperity preacher on the planet. But, you know, for my grandfather, we have never once taken a single donation that wasn't designated. Like, people are aware they're giving for this mission. And when people give for that mission of him traveling and preaching on a jet, it's because their lives were affected by my grandfather coming to preach this message, right? So then they turn around and say, oh, okay, well, this message actually saved my life and has actually changed my life. I want to now pay it back. It's so funny. Like, the Bible calls it sowing and reaping. The Bible says, whatsoever you sow, you shall reap. The world calls it karma. The world calls it law of attraction. But like, when you say, if you sow money, you'll reap money, and you're a Christian, the world wants to call it the prosperity gospel. But like, the world literally lives their life that way. Yeah. Like Joe Dispenza and all these things, all these people that are talking about this, the law of attraction and like changing your world with your words. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. That came from the Bible. Yeah. So it's like, people want to talk like karma all day long. Like, oh, what goes around comes around. It's like, we believe that too. Yeah. If you sow hate, you're going to reap hate. If you
you're also not supposed to like sow, whether it's investing into a company, whether it's giving in a church, with fear, because then that's what you're sowing. You're sowing money with fear. You're supposed to sow with trust, sow with belief, sow with faith.
Well, and finances are the one area in the Bible that God says, test me. Test me in your finances. And I think it's because God knew that money, like I said before, money would rule the world, and he needs to know that your heart is not connected to your money. My grandfather and my grandmother grew up with nothing except debt. They were in so much debt. And my grandmother read the Bible verse, "Oh, no man, nothing but to love him." And they made a decision that they were going to get out of debt. They were never going to be in debt again. And whatsoever you sow, you will reap. And they just started repeating what they were reading. And they were seeing it change in their life, and then it changed in other people's lives. And that's the whole story.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about the fact that there's public investigations onto the family?
Honestly, like, I think people are bored. You know, the people that it's just like a fun thing to go crazy about. I honestly don't understand. If people knew what my grandfather were actually worth, they would be so bored. Yeah. Like the people making the YouTube videos, and like there's a documentary called The Religion Business. If they were accurate on their research at all and they knew what my grandfather was worth, they would be bored out of their minds. So I just don't really, whatever the number is you think my grandfather's worth, just divide it by like a lot, and you're maybe close. It's just, I don't know. I don't get the hype.
Now this is the heavy one. When people say your family preyed on the vulnerable, how do you sit with that?
When people prey on the vulnerable.
Because critics say that vulnerable people were taken advantage of and exploited with his preachings and manipulation tactics to have them
I've seen in general, and what they're referring to for people who don't know who my grandfather is, or what this concept is. There are ministers out there who will say, like, if you're dying of cancer and you want to believe God for a miracle, donate $1,000 today and God's going to give you your miracle. That is not what we believe. We do not treat God as a vending machine. We do believe in the law of prosperity, which the Bible distinctly talks about. Like I said, when you drop something and it falls, it's the law of gravity. The Bible talks about the law of prosperity. Whatsoever you sow, you'll reap. And we just have repeated that. So like if someone is in a position and they're like, wow, I don't have any money, and this person's saying that if I sow $10, I'm going to reap a harvest, that is something that I believe. But it's also what the world believes. So I don't understand, like, if you sow this, if you... Again, karma, law of attraction, it's the same thing. And feel free to chime in from the audience, but I just don't really understand the difference, to be honest.
I remember that when I was in Dallas this past week, there was a preaching that I sat in next to you, and he was talking about being in a truck with his friend. I don't know if you remember it, but he was saying that he was like riding on a truck, and that his friend was like, and he sped the other car because he loves his truck that he has, that it's older, but it like has an engine and they don't make it anymore and whatever. And in that, he was just like, you know, I love this truck, but I worked hard for this truck, and I'm not going to go and get a race car or this because like I love this, but I just want you guys to know, like, you also deserve the things you love. Like, it's not just like, hey, I'm boasting this and I want this. Like, he is telling you, like, you deserve the greatness in life that you're meant to receive if you do right by God and if you do the right things.
Well, and what he was referring to is in the Bible, it talks about like, tell God what you want, basically. Mm-hmm. And his whole point is, if you go to God about what you want, it will eliminate what you need. Mm-hmm. So like, we're all in need of something. Like, I'm looking at the future of like the studio and like the podcast business, all this stuff. I need like 3 more clients. I want 10 more clients. You know what I mean? And his point in telling that story was like, tell God what you want and it will eliminate the things that you need. And I believe that God designed us to be a family. And the Bible talks about like the earthly father can only do so much for his children. How much more can God, who created us, do for his children? Mm-hmm. And I believe that. Like, I don't think God made us here to watch us suffer. I really don't believe that. And to the people, another response that like I hear all the time to this argument per se is like, well, what about the people that are poor? And to me, again, it goes back to the word prosperity isn't necessarily a monetary value. Like, how's your soul? How's your family? I would rather have my family be healed and whole and happy and go home every night with peace on my pillow than have $1 million in the bank. I know the richest people living in LA has shown me you can be really, really rich and really, really unhappy. Mm-hmm. So when I talk about this from the get-go, I'm not just talking about finances. Like, we mean wealth in every area of your life, not just in your bank account. Like, mm-hmm. I know really rich people that are really, really horrible and mm-hmm. really, really unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Now, where does Courtney sit in the middle of all this? When you're hearing this, when you're experiencing this, you weren't working at KCM for a while. You stepped back away from it and you decided to now step back into it. So where does that leave you in the shift of it all, having to hear it, having to see it and experience it?
Basically, I used to work for my grandfather, and then my dad was a CEO. He's been very public about his story. My dad's literally the story of the prodigal son from the Bible. Like, the prodigal son in the Bible basically, you know, asked for his inheritance too early and then ran away and blew all the money and like was partying and this and that. My dad was a CEO of Kenneth Copeland Ministries for a very long time, 15 years, got a DUI. My grandfather fired him because that actually is a level of integrity that my grandfather carries, I don't know what people want to say, but like he'd fire his own son over a DUI, you know? And not necessarily that, I don't want to make it legalistic. It's not the act of the DUI. It's like my dad was like unwell and like needed help. And my dad left town, moved away. The story of the prodigal son, my grandfather was like, I need you to just like come be with me. And my dad moved back and they like became best friends. Like, they have the best relationship of their entire lives are in the last like 3 years, mm-hmm. which is really sweet. But my role in that is my dad, when he moved back, he started kind of talking about, you think we'd ever go back there? Like to work out there? I was like, I'm good. Like, I'm enjoying my life. I don't like the pressure of ministry. I do think people in ministry are held to a higher standard mm-hmm. than people who are just going to church every day, like the normal person, which I enjoyed being the normal person. Like, I didn't like the pressure, the responsibility that came with it. And then in November of last year, my grandfather was like, hey, do y'all feel like it's time for you to move home? We were like, yeah, actually, we've been talking about that. So we came back, and in April, he just stopped me and he was like, all that stuff that you went and learned out in LA over the last 7 years, I need that here. I need what you learned out there. I need it here. And my dad, after a series of events, became CEO again. And now my dad's CEO, I'm CMO, which is crazy. But it's I see it as an honor. 3 years ago, I would have maybe not seen it as quite the honor. I would have seen it as a project. Like, I need to fix this public perception of what the world sees as of my grandfather. And I just don't see it that way. Like, if people knew what happened out there and the amount of people that we helped and the amount of money that's given every month to other organizations and home, like, we do a disaster relief project. And
why don't you guys announce it?
Well, that's part of like why I'm going back. Like, I'm watching all these people post trash about my grandfather. I'm like, you were so wrong. Like, I just would like yell it from the rooftops. Like, you have no idea. But also, my grandfather doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like, I asked him, I was like, what do you think about all this? Which he doesn't even know about. He's not on social media. He doesn't watch TV. So, like, he has no idea that any of this is going on. And I was like, what? You know, I told him, I was like, there's a documentary coming out. They, like, flew a drone up to your front door. And he was like, I don't listen to the praise and I don't listen to the hate. I just keep my head down and do my job. If the Lord wants to shut this down, he'll shut it down. Like, that was his response. I'm just like, cool, I'll just ride that wave with you, you know? And I do have a personal vendetta that, like, I'm going to try to rewrite the narrative around my grandfather and the legacy that I feel like he'll leave behind him when he's 88 years old. Like, you put your 88-year-old grandfather on a platform and, like, see what he says. There's going to be some moments where you're like,
Yeah.
But I see it as a high honor to get to work for him. And, you know, the legacy that will come afterwards, it's not about him. That's the thing. My grandfather cares for zero, right? That's why they call him Brother Copeland. People are always like, why do they call him Brother Copeland? He doesn't care to be called Reverend or, you know, evangelist or whatever. Like, I'm your brother, you know, just, I guess, call me that, you know, like, he just does. It's not about him. It's about the Lord. And that's why our slogan is Jesus is Lord. Cause it's not about him at all.
Were there ever times, which I guess you mentioned when you were 17, but now with everything coming up, have you ever questioned again everything you were taught?
I haven't been questioned against what I taught because I've seen it work in my own life at this point. I'm 32 years old, lived 3 decades, you know, coming out of COVID and not having the support of my family out here. Like, we moved to LA in 2018, 19, and to live through LA, like, in that hard time, like, you gotta have some type of foundation just to survive out here. And we did get plugged into a church out here, Zoe Church, with Pastor Chad Veach, like, and I'm very thankful for that. I never necessarily questioned what I was raised on. There were moments coming out of COVID where these videos were going viral that I was kind of, like, embarrassed. Like, I would see these videos coming out of Fort Worth, Texas. Like, I'm watching them go viral in real time. Like, this is embarrassing.
Yeah.
You know? And now when I see that, like, now if something comes out, which, you know, a part of my role is to, like, help give. There is a level of responsibility that I have to hold my grandfather to. Like, he's 88 years old. He's at this level in his life where he doesn't go to the grocery store anymore. I hope I'm not going to the grocery store in 10 years. I hope that that's taken care of for me. But for him, it's like, he's not seeing on a day-to-day basis what majority of the world goes through, right? So there is a level of responsibility that I have to hold him to of, like, just so you know, like, people are really struggling out here with X, Y, and Z. And I just want to remind you of that, you know? And so that's kind of what I feel like my role is in holding not just him, but my whole family accountable in that. And it's something I really appreciate about my dad is that he has lived a very real life. I think a lot of my family has grown up in a bubble. My dad, myself, a few of my other family members have lived a very real life with very faced with very hard things. And so for me now, I've seen the fruit of what I've learned and practiced my whole life. I've seen the fruit of that in my life now. And so more than ever now, you could never argue me off of this hill.
Where do you think the bubble was created from, though?
Just honestly, I think it's from being, like, in a super small town. Like, we're literally in a town of no one out there in the middle of Fort Worth, Texas. And, you know, like I said, I thought everyone prayed in tongues until I was, like, 10 years old. I thought, like, all Christians did that. I didn't realize that we grew up in this bubble. Like, everyone I knew did. Like, you know, you just came and experienced this week-long event. We used to do it all over the country. And, like, my best friend, I thought she lived in a hotel because I only saw her at these events, like, as a child, you know? Like, I just really grew up in a bubble. And if you know, he would have lived in, like, maybe LA, there would have been a lot more balance, you know?
Do you think some people think that the bubble is a cult?
Oh, sure. But the definition of a cult is, like, when you read the definition of a cult and you look at who we are, to me, this is just my perspective, and happy to have this conversation with anyone who's ever listened to a full sermon of my grandfather's. I, to be honest, ignore everything until someone like tells me, hey, I listened to this whole sermon front to back and these are the problems that I have with it. I'll have that conversation all day. I'll stand corrected. Like, show me in scripture where that's wrong. I'll stand corrected. I would say, to the point of the cult and people thinking that we are a cult, when you meet someone who came from a life of poverty and now live in a life of freedom, prosperity, joy when they didn't have joy before, you kind of find your people. And like, you kind of group together and you kind of stick together, and you can leave at any point though. That's like what the difference between us and a cult is. Like, you can leave at any time. We're just here like, hey, if you want to jump on this bandwagon, let's say we're wrong. Let's say it's a 50-50 chance. God wants you to be poor. God wants you to be whole in your life. I'm going to err personally on the side of being whole in my life. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like, if it sounds selfish, okay. But when you ask the people who have been giving to my grandfather's organization for years, ask them what their experience has been, because in their head, they're not giving to my grandfather. It's not a money issue, it's a heart issue.
Well, it's also not I'm being forced to give. It's I feel the want to give. You know, I think that when I did a few mini mic questions to a few people that were at this convention that was 100% free for anybody to come, there was one person that spoke about donating, and he said, I woke up, I said, you know, what was your experience about this week? Whatever he was saying, he was sharing his experience. I actually didn't ask him if he's donated or anything. And he said, you know, I got woken up in the middle of the night and I was told to donate. And I said, oh, okay. How did that make you feel? I said, it made me feel like so much peace. So at that point, if somebody wants to donate because it brings them peace and they have the ability to, because they have the funds to do so, nobody is forcing you.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like, we are, again, I'm not defending every prosperity minister on planet Earth. Right. I'm going to defend the organization that I know. I've been behind the scenes. I've seen the receipts, all of that. We always say, if the Lord is telling you to give, give. My grandfather would tell you, don't sow a bad seed. We don't want it. Like, don't give if you don't want to give. Like, we're not, you know, it's honestly like, it all comes back to like the sowing and reaping thing. We do believe that. My grandfather's life is built on a testimony of that. He was $100,000 in debt. He had nothing to his name, and he sowed his way out of that environment. If people feel like the Lord is calling them to give, it's also because they know the fruit of my grandfather's organization. It's not just going to him to live a lavish lifestyle. It's to carry on this message of hope in your future. Like, Jesus came that you may have life and have it more abundantly. And so this message of an abundant life, the Zoe life, that's all that it is. Like, it's that you can live in a hopeful life and not a sad life, or not a impoverished life. Like, it's in the Bible. Like, ask ChatGPT, tell me all the verses about God and money, read them.
Have you ever gotten frustrated with God about the fact that this is the narrative that your family has?
I just feel my grandfather couldn't care less. Like, imagine hating this guy and he's just out here like praying for you that you have a good day, you know. But I do feel bad for him. You know, I feel like they've dedicated their life every single day to the work of the Lord, of like, and that's the thing too. People want to say that my grandfather only talks about money. My grandfather is actually known for his message on faith, not money. So it's like, have faith in God. God gave you the authority. God sees you equal to his son, Jesus, seated at the right hand of the Father. Like, you carry that authority whatsoever you say. Like, what greater works you will do on this earth than what I did when I was here. That means like laying hands on the sick and they will recover, speaking to the brokenhearted and they'd be healed. Like, that's what my grandfather is about. So like, he just like doesn't care. So I feel frustrated on his behalf when I see these comments. It's just like, if you only knew.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people listening may have not grown up with a famous evangelist grandfather, but they have grown up with a really complicated relationship with church, which I feel like a lot of people can relate to that, or even religion. Some have healed from church and some are trying to find out where they sit with the idea of church. What would you say to someone who's in that space right now?
Yeah, I'm really thankful to my dad who raised me always with the awareness that God is perfect. The church is made of people and people suck. Like, people really suck and they're always going to let you down. And so I was always able to separate the two. The church never really affected my perception of how I saw God. I can't say that for everyone else. Like, and I've been through some stuff with the church. Like, so, when I see things about youth pastors raping, girls and the youth and stuff like that, like, my heart breaks for that. There's an accountability level that ministers and preachers should be held to. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, I was fine without the responsibility. I didn't really want anything to do with it. And so there is a level, you're held to a different standard. And when people don't keep themselves held to that standard, which to me, a lot of people should be like, a lot of people list a set of rules. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. The way I see it is the more time you spend with Jesus in your quiet time, the more you start to look like him.
The more you evolve naturally.
Exactly. So like, I hate it for people that have been through church hurt. I would say to someone who's been through church hurt, like, unfortunately, get in line. Like, we've all been hurt by the church. What is God saying to you right now? Like, if you turn this podcast off, if you put your phone away, what is God speaking to you right now? If you just close your eyes and listen to what he had to say to you, I honestly think it would be very different than what you had experienced in the church. And I'm not saying like avoid the church. I do believe in the church as a whole, in the local church and the purpose that it serves. But I also believe that church is made of people, and I do think people kind of suck.
Yeah, people are flawed.
I don't think it's your pastor's responsibility to carry the weight of your relationship with God. Your pastor's there to help teach you, educate you, but your relationship with the Lord is on you and God outside of the church.
If you could describe your faith right now in one word, what would it be?
Just loyal. Like, I'm to the point now where I still don't understand why bad things happen to good people. We lost a friend in a motorcycle accident a few years ago, and his wife was left alone out here in LA. Like, my brain still can't grasp. He was like our age, an aspiring like minister and comedian and firefighter, just like the best human on planet Earth, and he died in a motorcycle accident. Like, no one else was involved. Like, no one really knows what happened. And I just, like, that was really hard for me. Like, God, like, how could you allow this to happen? That's my hardest thing I struggle with, is why do bad things happen to good people? But I am to the point in my faith now, and the Bible says we'll never understand the mysteries of God. And I'm to the point now where I can settle with that. I'd rather have mysteries about God that I don't understand, but still have a foundation in him. It takes the pressure off me. Like, when people say like, well, I don't need God, that's fine. But then that puts all the pressure on you. And there's so much peace that comes with, like, I can wake up and just know, man, I don't know how I'm going to get through my day. I don't know how I'm going to get through this week. I don't know how I'm going to pay that bill at the end of the month, but God, I trust you. Yeah. There's peace that comes with that. And that peace to me has driven me to this loyalty that I'm to the place now in my life. And it wasn't this way 10 years ago, but I'm to the place in my life now that I really can't, like, I can't be swayed from how I feel about God.
Well, what I take from this conversation is that faith is not a one size fits all. We all have our own journeys. We all have our own stories. And I think that faith is personal. It's forever evolving, just like us as humans are. And I think that sometimes the loudest voices in the room are not the stories that you think you know, but maybe ones that you have to actually take time to quiet down and ask questions. Because maybe when you ask questions rather than assumptions, you may actually find out what the truth is. I think that Courtney's story is a reminder that the world writes a script for you. And it's not her job, it's not her family's job to go and scream, write, create, replying documentaries, replying talk shows, replying, reality shows, whatever it is, to try to rewrite the narrative. You're going to think at the end of the day what you want to think, and they're going to live their own experiences, their own truth. And at the end of the day, when you're speaking your truth and you're living your truth, you don't have to scream it. It shows for itself. So I know the person I have next to me. I love the person I have next to me. I love her family. I love what she stands for. I love who she is. I love her daughter. And I hope that this is a reminder for you guys to speak your own truth, to have first your own relationship with God, to have your own story, to ask questions before making assumptions. And even if in that moment you still have an opinion, that's fine. It's your opinion. It's not the end of the world. And listen, religion, I can tell you from my own experience from growing up in church, is a confusing thing to navigate at times. You know, like you hear a lot of hearsay, you have your own experiences. Sometimes I myself have been mad at God, have been mad at certain people. Certain people have let me down that I thought were supposed to be on this platform and help me and of this caliber. But at the end of the day, I don't think that I am better than the next person next to me. When somebody has a platform and has gotten a voice and notoriety, it's so easy to pick apart because you're able to see them bigger. They're bigger than you. You're able to really grab that microscope and see where is that little imperfection, and I want to find it. So, you know, don't throw rocks at a glass house because you don't happen to have that platform. You don't happen to have that experience. And at the end of the day, you don't know the story. You're writing the story for them. So I appreciate for you being vulnerable. I appreciate for you being honest. I know how strong you stand behind your family, and not to rewrite the narrative, but to just speak your truth. And I think that's something very important.
Thank you. And thank you for, honestly, like, I thought when you said we were going to talk about religion, I thought we were going to just talk about like faith in general. I didn't even know we were going to go this direction. I just want to encourage anyone out there who's listening, like, you know, Jesus was hated. They crucified him. His own people crucified him. So if you're someone who's struggling to just be, and that's me, when I moved to LA, I was not talking about my faith to people, you know, just be okay with the narrative not making sense sometimes. Like, that's the biggest thing I've settled with. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, it's okay if people hate my grandfather, if people hate me. They hated Jesus and they crucified him to the point of death. You know, I'm thankful my grandfather's still alive. The amount of death threats that we get every year is wild, but he's still alive. Like, Jesus was crucified, you know? So I just want to encourage anyone listening, like, you know, if you're in LA or if you're in New York or wherever you are and you don't drink, even if you're not a Christian, like, you don't drink or you don't do this or whatever because that's what you want or that's what you believe, just be confident in that. Like, who cares what people think, and just hold your own.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, it should be a relationship first and foremost with you and God. And earlier today, you know, somebody asked me how often do I talk to God, or actually they asked me how often do I pray, and I said, I mean, I talk to God every day. That's a prayer for me. So that's first and foremost the most important to me, is your relationship. And then after that, you know, it adds on branches to whether you belong to a church, you belong to a group, you belong to a community where you can feel supported by. But first and foremost, you should focus on your relationship with God and your unity with him. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Love you.
Love you.